Good morning and good afternoon, and welcome to the Weekend Wellness Hour. Today, we have a very good friend of mine joining us, and she was also one of my first guests that we had on the show, oh gosh, almost a year and a half ago. So I'm very happy to have Kelli Calabrese back talking about a completely different topic than we did before, which is more about energy. And today we're going to be talking about relationships and relationship breakups and how to develop a new life after something like that. And we've all had it in our life, and none of us like them, but we can also develop a really amazing life afterwards. And Kelli is an amazing human being. Her skills are phenomenal, and she's been in the fitness industry for several decades. She has created her own mastermind now with another woman called Women Who Prosper. She has created a community called Intentionally Fabulous for women who have gone through a breakup and who are looking to start a new life. So I want to welcome Kelli. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Amy. It's totally my honor to be here.
Yes, and it's great because you have so much wealth of knowledge. So it's very easy to have you come back on as a guest because you have so much to share and we can all learn. So really appreciate you taking your time on this Saturday.
I am happy to do it.
So as we dive into relationships, I would really appreciate if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about kind of your past several years and how you even got into coaching women who are going through breakups or divorces. And if you don't mind sharing that, and just to give us a little bit of context.
Thank you. Yes, I am happy to do it. Obviously, no one thinks their story is going to end in breakup when they say yes at the altar. We just don't. And I was, so committed to my marriage. So when my husband, after 24 years, came home and said, my commitment to our marriage is zero, it rocked my world. I mean, it emptied me out, took me to my knees, and just really to a place where I had to rethink everything. My identity was so lined up in being a wife and a mom. And I was in a season where my kids were finishing high school, getting ready to go off to college. So really everything in my world was changing. And it felt like this massive storm came in and just blew up my life, leaving this gaping hole in my heart. And it was so painful that I had to go on this journey to get well for myself. And then that self journey turned into wanting to help others, because that's what I've done as a coach for 34 years. And we're all going to do something. And I started to watch some of my friends who were going through divorce at the same time, because the first age for divorce is about 30, the second age is 50. So I was in that 50 category. And I just noticed what people were doing, and a lot of times it wasn't something healthy. And I was committed to helping the women do something healthy so that they could get through the grief and get to a place of not only healthy again, but really creating this whole amazing bonus life that they didn't even know was possible before.
Yeah, and that's incredible. You've turned it into something positive. And I'm curious, when you were going through your healing and your journey, what were some of the things that you did that was either good or bad? And you've now helped to hone it into when you help other women.
Well, the good things were that I got support. I was surrounded by an amazing group of wise friends who really cared about me. And at just the right moment, they'd send me a text, a song, a quote, let's go to lunch. So being surrounded by a supportive community was awesome. I did go to counseling. I did go to divorce recovery. I went on the retreats. I had a prayer group at my house every other Saturday for a year. And that was so healing. And so I read the books, I listened to the TED Talks, the sermons. I mean, I journaled, I meditated, I did breath work with Dr. Amy. So I really did a lot of things that were helpful. The things that were unhelpful were really sitting in it and stewing in it and just retelling that broken story, feeling rejected, feeling unlovable, just the things that when we're left alone with our minds, will run away. And the alone time is important, and so much growth can happen there, when you're kind of in the dark working through it. But if I could change anything, knowing what I now know, I wouldn't have stayed as sad, as depressed, as, I wouldn't have stayed as stuck and feeling sorry for myself as long as I did.
And it's hard to know because one of the thoughts that goes through our mind often is this wasn't an important relationship. I need to spend some time, grieving that relationship, but how long is too long? And like you've mentioned some of the grief stages, is that a common thing that you see with women? I know you experienced some of them yourself, but with other women, have you seen that it's you go through this grief?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the grief cycle, even in 30 plus years of studying personal development, I didn't know what this was. I had had loss in my life before. I lost best friends to cancer. I lost my dad. Hard things had happened, but nothing rocked my world the way the divorce did. And one day and I had found out that my ex-husband was engaged within a month of our divorce and remarried a few months later. And it was a few days after that, and it rocked me again. So there's those triggers that kind of take you to the core. So I called the woman who's now a dear friend who ran one of the retreats that I did, and she met me right away. And she's like, Kelly, you're depressed. This is good. It's on the upswing of the grief cycle. And somehow that gave me hope. I mean, I'm such a knowledge person. So when I see
Mhm.
something, I'm like, oh, that's a thing. And so I went and I studied the grief, and it's not linear. I mean, no one goes through it like, okay, better, better, better. It's like,
Yeah,
like messy. And
yeah,
so there's that shock at first for the person who gets the news, like, I'm not committed to you anymore. Let's end this and go separate ways. So there is shock. And then there is anger, and there's fear, and there's sadness, or deep sadness and grief. And so if you think about women or men that you know who have been divorced or had any hard thing in their life, they can get not only stopped or stuck, but stopped there. I mean, think about somebody you know who's just
yeah.
bitter. They are like,
Yes.
you don't even want, you can feel that energy walking through them. You're like, ooh, they are scorned, they are bitter, and they are stuck there. Or that deep, deep depression. I have a friend who lost a young son in an accident. This was 20 years ago. And she was just, you could feel the sadness on her 20 years later. I don't think I've seen her smile in 20
Oh,
years. So people can definitely get stuck and stop. And it does go back. There can be a trigger. And a trigger means there was a trauma. It means you were
yeah.
really hurt by something, and you get reminded of it and you go back to that place. So it does take the deep work, the self-loving, to really not get stuck, to be able to recognize it, to when something does happen, you don't fall as deep, as hard, as long, and you can quickly readjust and get back to a place of health. So if you're stuck or stopped, and I mean, you can go look up the grief cycle in any of those places, it's good to have that awareness and then see what are the lies that are keeping me there that just isn't true anymore, because it's typically something from the past, or you're just, it's no longer a season, but it's a cycle, and you just keep going round, 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 round.
Yeah.
The anger or the bitterness or the sadness or depression or whatever phase that you're stuck at.
And I like what you said about becoming aware of where you're at. A lot of times we're not even aware that we're stuck. We're just in the middle of it, and we're in that fight or flight mode, just trying to get through a day. And you're just like, okay, wake up, eat, work, and you're stuck in this cycle, but you're not aware of even how you project. There is, this talk in the personal development world you and I are very familiar with about the energy we give off, our vibrations, but a lot of the general public isn't even aware or even has heard of those types of concepts to know that when you walk in a room, people either gravitate towards you, they're neutral towards you, or they want to stay away from you based on what you give off. And so becoming aware of that, just even looking at the grief cycle and coming to terms with where you are, I think is a powerful exercise for people to do.
It is. And that's why it's so important to have an open heart and an open mind. Because when you do have, whether it's friends or strangers or coworkers, they repeatedly keep saying the same things like, wow, you're really defensive, or wow, that reaction did not at all match the situation. Like what is going on? Or wow, you really seem sad. Like I see you putting on a smile, but I just feel like there's something really sad. Are you okay? if you hear it repeatedly, it's probably true. It's a thing. Open your mind and just be willing to take a look and hold up the mirror and go, okay, am I just trying to put lipstick on and look good? Or why
Mhm.
am I so sad? Have I not grieved that? Because you can't just keep stuffing it down. Whatever you're
Yeah.
pushing down, you're going to get squeezed at some point and it's going to come out. So, whatever the next thing is, if it's in you, it's going to come out of you unless you really work on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you have worked with women in the past now, who have had different types of relationships. So some people have shorter term versus longer term. Have you seen different responses in terms of short term relationship breakups versus long term relationship breakups?
Yeah, the long term obviously is definitely more difficult. You have a long history with
Yeah.
someone, and you know, sometimes part of that grief is just grieving your best friend. Like it wasn't all bad. It couldn't have
Yeah.
been all bad. Like there were some happy memories. You went to the water park, you went to the beach, I
Yeah.
mean, whatever, you may have had kids together and there were birthdays and celebrations. And so sometimes just that person that you had inside jokes with, like you want to share the inside joke and they're not there anymore. And so
Yeah.
the longer time you have together with in-laws and extended family and all the life you live together, the harder it is and the deeper the grief is and the more your souls are tied. When a couple comes together and gets married, or they're committed one-on-one, their souls are connected to one another. The best in you should reflect the best in the other person, and they're also designed to pull out the worst in you because they're so intimate with you. They can see the little flaws and the things in you, and they're supposed to be calling those things out of you, like, wow, you really are defensive or jealous, or you compare all the time, or and in a good way pull that out of you. So when you're so intimate with that one person and now you're apart, it is a tearing of the soul. So it's a body, mind, spirit separation, and it takes healing for that to get refilled again versus a shorter relationship.
And I can understand that too. And we know our brain neurochemistry changes when we fall in love and we develop certain chemistry that when we see that person, it generates that nice, loving response. So to try to backtrack out of that, it can be hard as well. And it takes time for our brain chemistry to change.
It does, because now you have two hurt people, because it was never 100% them and 0% you. It just wasn't.
Yeah.
Even in the worst of situations, abusive, whatever horrible things that, I'm sorry if that happened to our listeners, but you still had some part, some responsibility in it that you need to own. And if you were the one who was left, you feel rejected. I mean, you feel like there's a giant R, just rejected, reject everywhere you go. And now you
Yeah.
carry that rejection everywhere, and you're so easily just reactive to, maybe you called a contractor and they didn't show up and you're like, ah, they didn't think, right away, and maybe they were in an accident. Like you just, your response right away is everyone's rejecting me, or a girlfriend didn't invite you, or you see all your friends on social media and what, you're just living from this place of rejection. And if you were the one who left, you carry a lot of guilt and a lot of
Yeah.
shame because you broke up your family and maybe kids, their lives, the statistics for divorced kids are not good. Doesn't have to be, nothing has to be the way the statistics are. You can be the best version of any situation, but you do feel shame and guilt for ending it, even if it was abusive, not healthy, that you still carry that there's guilt that it didn't work out. And did you do all you could have done? And so it definitely, I believe, takes intentional healing if you want to get well and not go back and repeat that same guy or that same girl over and over. It's the same, abuser, the same addict, the same whatever. You're just going to keep attracting and repeating in your affliction and their affliction the same thing.
Yeah. And it's sad because we have to become aware of what's going on in order to change. And I also have a question for you regarding initially after a breakup. What do you recommend friends say or do to help a person along? A lot of times we have no idea what to say or how to approach someone. And so it can either lead to you not talking to them at all, which is not good, or you berate them with, how are you? How are you? How are you? So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on how do you even approach that?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging because we don't know sometimes. We're like, well, they're probably just sad and they're busy and whatever, and we don't want to bother them. But at the same time, that person who's alone, give them opportunity, invite them, and keep inviting. And don't give up on them because maybe they're just feeling so low and so much like a victim that they don't want to bring that energy to the party this week.
Yeah.
But maybe a month from now or 2 months from now, you're going to the lake and you're like, hey, we're going to the lake. You want to come? Keep inviting them. Just give them the opportunity. When they're ready, they will say yes. And you can kind of push a little and say, hey, look, I know you're an adult, you're a grown up, but you haven't left the house in a year. So, I'm going to keep inviting you. I'm not going to be
Yeah.
offended if you say no, but I don't think you'll regret coming out with the girls to brunch today. Why don't you come? And so keep inviting, don't pester, don't be personally offended if they don't respond. And maybe they don't have support, maybe they have a ton of support. We just don't know. So you can just say to them, hey, I don't know what your needs are. I can't read your mind, but if you need something, call me first or think about
Yeah.
me. Or how can I help you? Ask them some really good open-ended questions. What needs do you have right now? And sometimes you just want someone to come and listen and you feel so good just to get everything out. Like you needed to just get it out of you. And you're like, "Phew, that was awesome. Like I could have paid a therapist $150, but thanks for just listening. I don't need you to
Mhm.
say anything. I just need to know I'm not crazy. I need to get it out of me.
Yeah.
So ask them, how can I help you? I love you. I want you to be well. I want you to know you're included. I'm not sure how to help you. Can I just drop you off some food? Or do you want to have a wellness day? We'll go for a walk and get our nails done. So just offer
Yeah.
without, and say, hey, if I'm bugging you, just say you're bugging me and I will not be offended. And they
Yeah.
just will feel loved knowing they're seen and they're
Mhm.
heard because you
Yeah.
feel so isolated. That's one of the things people will do. They may isolate or they may reverse where they're just, nonstop going, going, go, just being booked, friend, 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 out, out, out. And that's not healthy either. So people are going to do something like go out and drinking or find another man or
Yeah.
just escape, run away, totally isolate, not answer the door, not answer the phone. Look for your friends to do something healthy and just keep offering healthy solutions and say, hey, if you just want me to listen, I will come over and listen. I won't
Yeah.
give you any advice, but it might just help you to get everything out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that. And I can see when you provide support that way and you ask that open-ended question of how can I help or be of service to you, how it can also help the person's mindset shift just a little bit and help them start to think about a solution or what they need or self-care. So I can see how that can be helpful because I imagine as a person is going through this process, their mindset needs to change too if they want a different life.
Absolutely. You need to keep renewing your mind away from the past. There's nothing you can do to change it. We've all done things in the past that we wish we had done differently. We only get today. The number one need that every human that breathes on the planet has is to be loved unconditionally. And so
Mhm.
when your relationship just broke up, you're not feeling loved unconditionally. But a lot of times it'll turn into self hatred too. You start to hate yourself. So the self-love is so important and to stop blaming yourself, even if you made mistakes, even if you were wrong, it's not helpful to blame yourself for things you already did that you can't change. Stop judging yourself. Stop the perfectionism if that's a thing. It's a thing for a lot of people, especially women, and it just causes so much stress and it is no fun at all to be a perfectionist, to live with a perfectionist. So just start to love yourself back to life and put great things around you. So turn off the news, get the negative out. If it's the news, if it's toxic friendships, toxic thinking, be renewing your mind. Start with your own self-talk, whether you use affirmations, you talk in the mirror, you write things out, you listen to things that are inspirational, if it's music or just one of those motivational compilations, and just really be patient with yourself because it takes time. When I first got certified as a divorce coach and I'd spoken to friends who have been divorced for a long time, I asked them about how long until you felt normal. and the
Mhm.
average was 4 years. And I remember I was drinking
Yeah.
iced tea, and I was like, I'm like, 4 years, like I wasn't even a year in at that point. I was like, 4 years just seems so, well, that's the average. I mean, that's what all the numbers show. It could be 2 to 5+ years. So,
Yeah.
my counselor said to me, don't get married, for at least 2 years. I'm like, married, I'm well into over 3 years and haven't even dated yet. I can't even imagine. But
Mhm.
everyone is a little bit different, but
Yeah.
heal yourself, be your best version of yourself that you can before you take it into another relationship.
Absolutely. And you kind of mentioned some things, but I wanted to touch on just different ways of healing. And if we could dive into them a little bit more so that people can understand, one, healing doesn't look the same, but two, what are some methods that people can use and how does it help change your mindset? Does that make sense?
Good. Yeah, I mean, one of them is identity. When your
Mhm.
identity is in things of the world that are fleeting, like being a wife, like being a mom, like having a certain title at work, or being in a certain friend group, or a certain neighborhood, or a certain church, whatever it is, if your identity is in anything of the world and that just goes away in a moment, you can feel really, really lost. So, I suggest that you consider a spiritual journey where your identity is in a higher power that's so much bigger than we could ever understand or certainly ever put in a box. That when your identity is there, that's the thing that you can stand on. Another is forgiveness. This was huge and really one of the last steps that I did. I wish I had done it sooner, but it just happened when it happened. Because early on I had said, I forgive him. But then one text
Yeah.
message, and I was like, oh, obviously that root is still in there. I haven't totally forgiven. But
Mhm.
the biggest part of the forgiveness was the self-forgiveness, because I had
Mhm.
felt like such a failure. And so the forgiveness, when you're not forgiving, let's say, it's a hidden cancer. I mean, it leads
Yeah.
to so much anxiety, fear, heartbreak, isolation, depression, anger. I mean, when you're not forgiving yourself or the other person, there's resentment, low self-esteem, the shame, the guilt, all of that is just awful when you're holding someone else in the fire, but also holding yourself in the fire. Why are you burning yourself? Why are you not forgiving yourself? So the forgiveness, it just gives you hope again, and the forgiveness comes from a higher place. So I'm not a failure because my marriage didn't work out, and that gives me peace and joy and hope and healing. And it just kind of lets it go. It lets that grip go that you have on yourself that, Amy, people don't even breathe. I would call you and
Yeah.
I'd be sitting and I wouldn't even be breathing, and like I would gasp for
Yeah.
air because it was and a lot of it was just I was a failure. I was a failure. I wasn't forgiving myself. And when I did, it really freed that grip and that control that had me, and the person who had, hurt me, harmed me. And my self-esteem started to go up, and my inner strength started to go up, and my health started to go up, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. I mean, it was palpable. When I sat on that couch and said to myself that I forgive myself, I could feel the difference. It was like
Yeah.
something inside me that didn't want to release finally did. And the forgiveness is really powerful to the point where I decided to live what I call a life of pre forgiveness, where I pre decide that I'm not going to judge anyone.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be self critical. I decide ahead of time that I'm not going to criticize me. I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to judge the government, the virus, the economy. I just want things to be a win win. And so if I live a life where I decide, it really, in my world, it doesn't matter a whole lot what's happening based on who's in office or laws that change on a big scale, that I'm just going to live this win-win life. So the identity, the forgiveness, the renewing your mind, like you're talking about, like always come to the
Mhm.
present of, okay, there's nothing I could do about the past. The future, there's not anything I could do to secure this future that's guaranteed. I can make the best
Mhm.
decisions today for my health and my life and my friendships and my business, my family, but there's still no complete security in the future. So really all there is the now. And when you can renew your mind to that and really get present, you can enjoy yourself. You can have fun. You can live this whole life of adventure that's amazing because you're not guilty from the past. You're not afraid of the future. So renewing your mind to the present and then doing everything you can to be healthy, to be smart financially, to celebrate life, just to know that, yeah, there's hard things, but it's not all hard. And we have a choice in what we do with that.
Yeah, and it's hard at times to realize we make life a lot harder than it needs to be. If we step back and work on the simplicity and working on things that matter to us, but in a simplistic way where it's okay, pick one thing to focus on, or pick two things, or pick one things in different aspects of our life, and we chip away at it, and it can help bring some of that complexity down and some of that feeling of overwhelm. Because I know with breakups there is that feeling of overwhelm, that there's so much going on. You want to curl up in a ball and throw the pillow over your head, but you can't, especially if you have kids or animals or anything like that.
Yeah, that is so true. And there could be a lot going on. And when you're going through a divorce, you may see an ugly side of someone that you have never seen because now you're making big decisions about your home, about your money, about your kids, about your investments, about all of that. And when it gets down to those kind of decisions, the worst will come out in people because they might feel like their back is up against the wall or they deserve something different. And so you need to be prepared for all of that. You're probably moving, your kids might be changing schools, the whole family dynamic and extended family dynamic changes. So they call it a life event for a reason. Is
Yeah.
one of the It's harder than a death of a spouse. I mean, research shows that divorce is absolutely harder because the death has a finality to it, and there's no more having to see that person in town with their new wife or how they're treating your kids or turning your kids against you. Or, I mean, there's so much with the kids and manipulation and parent alienation and just so much that goes on there that you have to continue to deal with. And now, your wife is off with her new boyfriend on that Disney trip that you were supposed to be on, or, so it's just a constant barrage. So you really have to get a grip on your emotions and keep them in check and just heal them, get to a healthy place, body, mind, and spirit as much as possible.
And how do you help people get to the point where they don't lose faith in relationships? Because that's a hard one.
It is, and especially as you get older, because now everyone's kind of bringing their baggage
Yes.
from the past. There is a program, I have not done it yet, but once I start dating and meet that other person, called Re-engage. And it walks you through together, like you will see ahead of time before you decide, if you even want to get remarried or live together or anything, kind of all the steps to what a united, committed, loving, trusting relationship would be like. So I highly recommend that program. I have friends who have done it, friends who teach it. It's called Re-engage. So there's great books out there for couples to do together. But you need to get to a point where you trust yourself. You can start trusting other people. The trust is huge. And if you think you're going to start another relationship and you're still having trust issues and you don't love yourself very much and you're not patient with yourself, you're not setting yourself up for success. You're taking a really broken, hurt, wounded person into the next relationship. But it can be amazing. I grew up in the Northeast, and when we moved to Texas and we met people, some of them were on their second marriages, and I had no idea. Like, you just meet them as a couple, and then later
Yeah.
I find out. I'm like, you guys are so in love. Like, this is amazing. Like, well, it's our second marriage, and so I'm like, now that gives me so much hope. I'm like, wow, because you made the mistakes, like the petty things that aren't really important anymore. Maybe you got married when you were 22, 23, 24, and then 40, 50, you're a whole different level of maturity, and hopefully it's all for the better. You're wiser. You're not worried about the little things that really are not important. You may so love and appreciate having someone after you've been alone for so long. I actually had a friend stay with me as a 20-year friend, dear, dear friend. We're like brother and sisters, who came and stayed for a couple days while he was here last month. on a trip, and just like pulling into my driveway, knowing there was a man in my house who was cooking, I was like, and then we went for a walk, and the trash
Mhm.
bins were out, and he's like, let's both grab one. And I was like he had no idea, like it was all so good for my soul. I'm like, wow,
Mhm.
like one day when I have this relationship again, I am so gonna
Yeah.
appreciate if someone cooks for me or takes the trash in. And
Yeah.
when you're alone, you do it all alone, and you're like, oh, like it was such a like a foreshadowing of what will be, in the future to come
Yeah.
to me. So I think you're more appreciative, hopefully, if you're healthy.
Yeah. And it's great to feel that and to see that and realize, okay, there is this vision of a future where it's a team.
Yes.
It's a team and both people are on that same team and working towards the same goal.
Yes, and I highly encourage visualization as a regular exercise. So get excited about this future that you can envision in amazing detail. I mean, let this be part of your daily mission to really think about it, to write it down, to dream about it, to go big, get visual, get vocal, get vulnerable with it, get eventually to a point where it starts to happen and it becomes victorious. So imagine, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where will you live? What will you look like? I mean, there are so many great things to being single that it could be a great season of your life. There's no reason you shouldn't be in the best fitness, health, sleep. I mean, you make all the decisions when you're single. So
Yes.
you're not like reading the books you want to do and doing all the self-love and self-care and journaling that you want now as a single. All that will just build to when you are a couple again. So that should be exciting because all that you're pouring into yourself will just continue. It won't stop when you meet the person. It will just be enhanced and unified and just projected out. So I'm big on vision boards and writing it out, telling a friend, putting the pictures places that you can see it, and get excited about it. There's power to it. I've got a stack of vision boards here, and in this cabinet, I've got journals and diaries since when I was 8 years old of things I wrote down that really happened. So the current situation does not mean it's what your future is going to be.
Right. And it's great to use a vision board the way that you said, especially in drawing in the emotions so you can feel and to help your brain shift into, okay, this is what I want. This is where I'm going. I'm putting this out there into the world and see what comes. And, you start to pay attention to more of those things that you have on your vision board.
Yes. Yep. I am all about it. But January 1st, every year, I do a vision board party where I invite girlfriends over and I just have all the boards out. We got stacks of magazines and they can print pictures. And
Mhm.
I check in with them once a month throughout the year on the first to just go, hey, how's that going? And, even with COVID and, things that no one expects and life throws our way, you can
Mhm.
still see, great things happen and make adjustments. I'll look at my board and sometimes, these things happen, this has not happened, but this isn't important anymore. Now there's something new and it's made to be flexible. It's not rigid. It should excite you. It should line up with the direction that you're going. And it's life, it's organic. So there's going to be things that happen that no one expected because no one has the life they thought they would have. I look at my kids now in college and they're taking a certain degree and they do certain athletics and they have this vision and it may or may not happen. I mean, the percentage
Yeah.
of people that become professional athletes are small, but they have that dream. So keep running until, and if it doesn't
Yeah.
happen, you have a plan B. So just always be open to the plan B and C and so on.
That's great. So, can you tell us a little bit about your program, Intentionally Fabulous, and how are you helping women? What does that look like?
Yeah, so intentionally fabulous. After the 3 years, and both of my kids were in college, I felt like I checked a box. Like, okay, that was really my goal to get two kids successfully in college. And I sat down and I went for 4 months and pulled out the best of the best of everything that I had learned on my healing journey. So my grief counselor, I just pulled out all the notes from the conferences and everything I went through, and I put together an 8-week program called Intentionally Fabulous. And it's designed to take them through that grief cycle to get to a place of the healthy and then even better so that they don't get stuck and they don't get stopped in any of those places. And it includes a healing guide that has weekly affirmations that have to do with the lesson. So for example, week 2 is freedom and forgiveness. So all the affirmations are about freedom and forgiveness. And then there is an activation, meaning you have some work to do. So this isn't magically going to happen. You need to maybe write that letter to your ex. And even if you don't give it to them, but you burn it, there's power in doing all these exercises. And then there's some celebration. So what are you going to do to celebrate that you went through this freedom and forgiveness and you're coming out on the other side, and that you want to recognize that and do something that makes you happy? There's a whole healing guide that includes visualizations and meditations that goes along with it. There's a community. So you can start it at any time. Intentionallyfabulous.com. They can go there. There is the whole program. And then there's a VIP level that includes personal coaching with me each week for the 8 weeks.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. And I know I've heard feedback about your program and how you've helped women. So I really encourage people to take advantage of it. Now, is it geared more for women at this point?
Yes, so the program is designed for women, and there's 21 bonus interviews in there, including one with Dr. Amy, where the people who helped me on my journey, they did an hour interview with me. So the ladies in the program get to be a fly on the wall to what it would be like to do an hour session with a grief coach, a divorce coach, a counselor, a breath therapist, and so on.
Yeah, that's great. And really appreciate you sharing all this, and especially your background and how you've helped people. Is there any last minute advice you would give to a listener who, whether male or female, who has just gone through a breakup or is going through one or knows someone? What's one thing you would say to them that just kind of might snap them into a different existence?
Yeah, I would say to let love win no matter what happens. Let that be the barometer or the lens that you look through to just get up every day and breathe and make decisions and live your life, that the past doesn't equal the future, that love absolutely can win. So love yourself, love any chance, any opportunity that you have to love people, and just keep focusing on love being the ideal. And that will help to give yourself some extra care, be extra patient, to calm your mind, just focus on whatever it is that, not necessarily a romantic love relationship, but what I call agape love, which is a godly love relationship. And that will help you to manage your emotions, give you peace, to lower stress, to breathe. So you can't see in my office, but I have the word love like on pillows and all over shirts. I mean, I had to wear that to encourage myself. So I was just like, love wins, love wins, love wins. Because I know in the end, love will win, even if it didn't look like it in my relationship. So it helps to stop blaming, and it just gives peace and patience. It's a fruit of the spirit. Love is the greatest of all of them.
Yeah, that's well said and beautifully said. Thank you so much. And really appreciate your time here on a Saturday to share, to help our listeners and to just give advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm happy to do it.
Wonderful. And thank you all for joining us today for the Weekend Wellness Hour show. We look forward to seeing you again next weekend. Have a great rest of your weekend and take care. Bye.